The Vision 2030, it's such a simple concept, yeah, but it's actually quite unique from a country perspective. As a CEO of a business, I'm always told that the single most important thing you have to do is to create a strategy and a vision for your business, because if your employees can't get inspired and understand what you're trying to do and what their role in the strategy is, they won't execute very well. And actually, that's all that they've done. They made it very clear that this is what we want to achieve in 2030, and it allows the whole country and the whole industry and all the players in the ecosystem to get behind it. I mean, it's genius, really.
Welcome to the Issuer Academy, Paymentology's podcast to innovate, scale, and provide impact. I'm your host, Merusha Naidu. If you're a fintech professional, banking leader, or an innovator in the digital payment space, you're in the right place. Here, we deep dive into the challenges and triumphs of launching next-generation card programs, from virtual cards and digital wallets to cross-border FX solutions. Let's get started. Welcome to a special live edition of the Issuer Academy here at Money 2020 in the Middle East. Today, we are decoding Saudi Arabia's fintech moment, which segments are winning, where the market is moving next, and how on-soil infrastructure and policy tailwinds are accelerating real products for real customers. I am joined today by two brilliant guests. Firstly, we have Birce Arslan, VP Fintech Enablers, Business Development EEMEA at Mastercard. Welcome, Birce.
Thank you very much for having me.
And then we have our very own CEO of Paymentology, Jeff Parker. Welcome back, Jeff.
Welcome. I feel like I need a longer title.
We can add to it. Let's start with a bit of an icebreaker. Saudi's energy is palpable. New licenses, fast-moving partnerships, and users adopting digital habits quickly. Birce, from a fintech enablement lens, one thing that makes Saudi easy to start and one area where patience pays off.
Thanks a lot once again for having me. I think a few years ago when we started to look at the fintech segment and speak with our fintech partners, they were saying that they were very happy to be operating in unregulated markets. But very quickly, they realized that actually regulation brings a bit of a framework, a guideline in terms of how to operate and scale in the market. And I think one thing that Saudi has done outstandingly well has really been around the regulation piece. They've kind of enforced how fintechs can operate, how they can grow their business, and by putting in the sandbox, for example, the SAMA sandbox, the CMA Fintech Lab. There's a lot of initiatives that really support how fintechs can grow their business here. So that's definitely been an outstanding achievement by Saudi, in comparison, of course, to emerging markets as well. One thing where I would say that patience really does pay off is really around partnerships. You need to ensure that early on when you're growing your business, when you're starting your business, that you build the stakeholder engagement early on and that you start to engage with the regulator, that you start to speak with the banks that might be supporting your business and other potential fintechs that are also part of that ecosystem. That takes time and takes patience as well, but certainly pays off at the end.
100%. Jeff, to add?
No, I was going to say, I think that point about patience is super important. One of the things that I think you learn when you go across to different markets is that how do those different kind of cultures work? And I think from the West where we come from, relationships are sometimes a bit more transactional. And I think here the partnerships have to be very much from the start, have to be about long term. And you build those relationships, and it may be many months, even years actually, before you kind of start to commercialize some of those relationships. But they, by the very nature of the length of that time, I think you build stronger relationships and ultimately stronger partnerships.
Absolutely. It's all about those joint values and goals, right? And that builds over time. That trust is built, and then you really grow from there. And given, the 2030 vision, things are moving at an accelerated pace, but at the same time, it's also about slowing down and making sure that you have the right partner, the right trusted partners who you can grow with. Jeff, one thing for you. So can you take us through a recent customer or product moment in KSA? What told you that the market had maybe turned a corner, and how did that, influence your roadmap?
Well, tough one. Before I answer the question, I think it's just worth letting people know here. I think this event has been pretty exceeded my expectations, I think. And I think that's the reason I bring it up is I think it's actually just a good symbol of where fintech is at in this region. Yeah, it's a huge event. It's their first time. The energy, as you said, is very palpable. And I think it's a very positive in terms of how we should think about the future opportunity within fintech. To answer your question, I think, we're very fortunate here to have some great clients in the region. We support D360 and Tabby, to name a couple, but I think specifically what we noticed with D360 is that they had a real need their consumer base as a real kind of hunger for tokenized virtual products. And so making sure that our proposition has the ability to instantly issue virtual cards and to support Apple Pay, MADA Pay. We've just seen yesterday the announcement that Google Pay and Alipay Plus are going to be here as well. And so from a product roadmap perspective, it really kind of highlighted the need that we need to lead that kind of innovation in that digitalization and tokenization piece. And hopefully our clients see the benefit of that as we go through.
Absolutely. We're seeing a complete digital transformation across not just Saudi, but also the whole of EEMEA. And I think there was a goal to make 70% of all transactions digital by the end of 2025. Saudi has exceeded that, but now it's 79%. So we can already see that, once the infrastructure and the services are there, customers are ready to adopt it, which just shows you that all of the changes in the digital transformation is having an impact, which is so exciting.
I think the background suggests that it's probably the fastest adoption of digitalization anywhere in the world ever, in history. Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. Now let's look at, like I said, the EEMEA view. Saudi is setting the pace. It's influencing peers across the whole of EEMEA. Let's map the shape of growth. So Jeff, which fintech segments are scaling the fastest in Saudi? Is it consumer wallets, SME corporate spend? Is it remittances, embedded finance, BNPL credit? There's so many. What do you think?
I think many sectors are doing well, and I think it depends on how you think about it. So I think the biggest trend, I think from my perspective, that the new trend is the digital wallets and the virtual cards. I think everyone, and it goes back to the kind of the piece I mentioned earlier around kind of tokenization, etc. I think that access to a wallet and tap to pay effectively is super exciting. And I think when you think about Vision 2030 and financial inclusion and really trying to give access to the unbanked, the people that don't have access to traditional financial services, I think it's right for those kind of wallet kind of scenarios. But more broad than that, expense management is a super growth one for us. I think remittance is obviously a huge channel for Saudi. I think it's one of the biggest remittance channels in the world to multiple corridors. And I think we used the word embedded finance. Actually, I was having this conversation yesterday. I don't think the term embedded finance really exists in the Middle East because they just assume it's embedded. So you almost need to term it. It's every payment should be embedded into what it is. And so I think that in itself, that talks about the growth and the demand in that space. Absolutely.
I think customers now just expect it. They expect the payment to be a part of their journey and invisible, because that's really what they've started with, right? They don't need to leapfrog over anything else. So absolutely true. Birce, from your EEMEA lens, which Saudi patterns are now showing up across the region? Is it, and what makes, things uniquely Saudi?
Well, I couldn't agree more with Jeff. So Saudi specifically is a very wallet-centric kind of community. And so we can see that with STC Pay. We see it with Tikmo as well. The growth of the consumer base that they have here is really phenomenal. We see that now replicating across the rest of the region as well, specifically in Africa, in markets like Nigeria, where it's super wallet-centric as well. So tokenizing those wallets will be, a key priority as well. And that's something that's going to be, driving across the region more broadly. We also see, from Mastercard's standpoint, the domestic relevance. So, of course, MADA plays a very significant role here in the Saudi market. We see other regulators in other markets actually kind of copying the MADA model and replicating it for their own purposes as well. So it's really important to see and to collaborate with MADA and with the Saudi network here. What's uniquely Saudi, I would say, is, I think both of you touched on it, is the vision that we have here, which is around, the Vision 2030, payments and banking the unbanked, financial inclusion, and digitizing the economy overall, I think is a key priority. And it gives kind of light to people to actually work towards that vision as well. And that's why I think a lot of the business that we're seeing at the event here as well are really kind of empowering that vision that we have for the country.
Absolutely. I think the sandbox especially is really helping fintechs to trial out new products, see how customers interact, and whether the adoption is going to be good or bad. So that's something that's very different.
Birce takes on a great point. The Vision 2030, it's such a simple concept, yeah, but it's actually quite unique from a country perspective. As a CEO of a business, I'm always told that the single most important thing you have to do is to create a strategy and a vision for your business, because if your employees can't get inspired and understand what you're trying to do and what their role in the strategy is, they won't execute very well. And actually, that's all that they've done. They made it very clear that this is what we want to achieve in 2030. And it allows the whole country and the whole industry and all the players in the ecosystem to get behind it. I mean, it's genius, really.
Yeah. I think that level of clarity and simplicity is what is making it so successful, right? The regulators have basically said, look, this is our plan. Let's go out and execute. But at the same time, they're supporting fintechs, they're supporting digital banks. They're creating a safe space to actually, create the vision and actually do it. Execution is key. And that's what we're already seeing with the likes of, D360 as an example. And we have other partners like Endros coming up. So there's so many exciting customers that are kind of taking up that mantle and saying, we can do it. We can be that digital player. Always so exciting. Now, when we talk about, Saudi being the perfect launch pad, founders ask, why now? We've spoken a lot about Vision 2030 and accelerating digital adoption and SME growth. And of course, Saudi offers quite a mix of scale, speed, and support, that early products need. Jeff, your Saudi entry thesis around Vision 2030, is it about talent? Is it about digital adoption? Is it just about partnership appetite? What's the one misconception that first timers should drop on day one?
They drop on day one. I'm a big believer in solving real problems. And I think I don't think there's a right or wrong, and different people take different approaches. But if I was a founder, the one thing that I would drop, or I'd encourage people to drop, is this belief that if you build a great product, customers will come, because I don't believe it. I think that if you build a great product, there are lots of things that can stop customers coming. It could be bad timing, it could be bad pricing, it could be a bad go-to-market, you have bad execution. And so my view would be find a real problem, solve that problem, and then make sure that you put your efforts around executing on that. And of course, you need a great product in the end to scale. But I don't think having I've seen plenty of technically brilliant products that are not successful.
Absolutely. It's about having the product, but also making sure that it speaks to the consumer, right? And I think that's probably the one misconception I would say, lots of fintechs have. They have a great idea, they have a great product, and they're like, yes, it's going to work. But is it speaking to the pain points of the customer on the ground? And that's probably something that they need to really, really hone in and look at.
I think just to maybe add on that, we've seen the buy now, pay later segment really boom within the Middle East. So we've seen also the recent announcement by Tamara just yesterday on the investment. Tabby has also taken off substantially within the region. It's showing that it's solving for a consumer need. That gap was in the market. They came in and they were able to capture the customer base and also provide solutions that resonate with the consumer. And I think that's a success story. And we probably will start to see more of those examples in the future as well.
Absolutely. And I think when you look at it, one enablement route you could recommend for new entrants. So I think obviously looking at the pain points of customers on the ground, where are the gaps? Where do we need to fill those gaps? But what other things should new entrants be looking at, Birce? So from program integration, partnership parts, what is reliably going to accelerate first-time value in Saudi?
I think as a first entrant, it's really important to understand who are the partners that you're going to be working with and dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So we mentioned the regulator as being a key stakeholder here. We need to ensure that as a first entrant that you are engaging with the regulator, that you're clarifying the needs from their side as well. And so when it comes to submitting, for a license agreement, then you have all the material that is required to actually obtain that license. Similarly, working across the sectors. So if, for example, you require a BIN sponsor bank, then you work very closely with a financial institution, or you work closely with telcos potentially to gather some data. So you need to kind of double down on the stakeholder engagement model early on. And then, of course, there are these platforms that you can take advantage of. So go in, leverage the Sama sandbox, and that will also put you in front of the game. And, the central bank will also know that you actually kind of leverage those capabilities that they're offering you, which is also very important.
Absolutely. I think the APIs, which are part of the sandbox, are obviously helping customers or helping new entrants to see what is possible. And then at the same time, you also have lots of banking as a service platforms coming up to also help facilitate fintechs enter the region. So I think it's also really about when to build, when to buy, when to partner, and having a clear vision of what does that look like. So it's kind of like, if you look at it, what are we trying to solve for? What is the pain point? How do we build the product and the tech to support that? And then how do we create that customer experience and adoption, right? So when we look at new entrants, they need to look at all of those three pillars and make sure that they're covering all three.
That's why you moderate the show, because you can just bring all the questions together all the way through.
Thank you. Now, I know that you touched on MADA, and I really want to dive a little bit deeper into this, right? Because the reality is that Saudi is so unique because there is MADA, right? You have MADA, you have dual badge, you have on soil. There are so many must haves that you need to cover in Saudi. And I think the quote is build for MADA and you build for Saudi, right? And then you turn dual badge flows and on soil residency to really keep the approvals high and your ops clean and efficient. So, Jeff, from your view, how does MADA shape day-to-day issuer fintech strategy, tokenized wallets, domestic authorizations, dispute flows, and what should teams plan for with on-soil processing? There's a lot to unpack. There's things like data residency, fraud, decisioning, keys. Help us to digest and dissect.
I was trying to digest all of those. So I think the point to note, and I think this is why localization is so key, is that markets across the globe are very different, and regulators have a very different approach to certain things. Requirements are different, cultures are different. And I think so when we look to, I guess, Saudi Arabia specifically, I think there's probably two key requirements, at least from my perspective, which make it unique for Saudi. One is the requirement to integrate into MADA, which is a local domestic switch. And the second is the requirement to be able to process a transaction and store data on soil. But understanding that is part of the reason I think that we as a business earlier this year took the decision to kind of set up an entity and a physical presence here in Saudi Arabia, because I think as much as I can try to understand the region, I know that there's better qualified people, local Saudis that understand the market, understand the customers, etc. And so having that localization is super important. Having said all that, I think what does that mean for us as a business? It means that we almost design for MADA from day one. I think it's important to, if you understand those requirements, you have to base your whole kind of design around those. And while we want to stay consistent to our global thesis, which is a single code base, a single integration, which allows customers to integrate in many countries around the world, we have to make sure that we meet the local requirements. So if we design for MADA, if we think about the client problems we're trying to solve and the trends that we're seeing, which we've already talked about around wallets and tokenization, we have to build around MADA Pay. And as I say, that's a key part and a key enabler. So I think we will want to, we've quite quickly integrated into MADA and been able to offer a lot of our tokenization capabilities around that. And we have quite a strong roadmap to do that going forward. The second piece, which provides complexity, especially for our model, is this on-soil requirement. So currently we are integrated into Oracle, which is a cloud-based capability, but it's on-soil here in the region. And soon we'll be extending that to GCP to enable us to give both resilience, but also choice to customers. But also from a technical design perspective, that creates complexity. And so we have to think about that from day one. How do we meet those requirements while not kind of disrupting the kind of software as a service proposition? I think simply you need to, sometimes there's this saying, what is it? Go slow to go fast. And I think with Saudi Arabia, that's a great one. You need to interact with the regulators, as Birce says. Some have a very clear understanding and instructions that we need to operate, which makes it very kind of easy for us to work through. We know then what these local requirements are. And so then it's just a question of taking some time, taking some experts, designing your solution. And then I think you can move much faster.
I think one of the things that I found so interesting when we as Paymentology entered Saudi Arabia was we planned for success before having a customer. And so we knew from the very start that MADA was going to be a huge part of our strategy. And I think, Jeff, you were on a panel yesterday where you guys were really talking about taking that local kind of, expertise and, the features that we need on the ground, but also bringing in that kind of international flavor. It's all about balance. It's about saying, how do we solve the problem here on the ground? But also, how do you support the regulator, right? Because by supporting MADA, you're supporting the regulator and really pushing through those domestic rails.
The other thing, I think, different regions have different requirements. And I think that allows as a business you to take different decisions. So many of the markets that we operate in, so we have clients in 65 countries, the investment to go into those new countries is actually very small in a number of cases. Saudi Arabia is quite different. So it's actually quite a big commitment for us to be here. And so for us, it's very much a long-term commitment to be here, which is why we did the registration, why we want to put people on the ground, why we've done the investment in MADA and local on-soil capability. But that plays, I guess, an important part into your overall strategy. And a good thing is it actually made us make a very conscious decision early on that we wanted to do that. And so we have to invest now for the next 5-10 years to build again.
Absolutely. It's all about going deep now. And Birce, I want to talk a little bit about dual badge cards, because The reality is yes, MADA is great and it gives you that real local coverage. But the reality is customers in Saudi are going to travel. They want to transact, internationally. So when we talk about, dual badge cards, how much of an influence is MADA having with you guys at Mastercard?
Firstly, I want to congratulate Jeff and the Paymentology team for this great milestone. I think that's phenomenal. So from a MADA co-badge standpoint, it's very important to Mastercard to work very closely with MADA as it is the national payments network. For all debit transactions, they are switched through MADA, which means that for both ATM and POS domestically, MADA plays a fundamental role. And it's a debit-heavy market as well. So with that, other schemes, such as Mastercard, we operate primarily on the cross-border side. So for any international transactions where consumers do want to travel abroad or they want to transact with an e-commerce player that is outside of Saudi, that's where we primarily come in. Then, of course, also from a value-added services standpoint, we have a number of fraud and cyber intelligence solutions that we've deployed in the market that kind of support the networks and MADA as well. And I think one thing that we've really kind of done proudly has been last year where we moved our gateway to Saudi on soil, also known as MPGS. And that was a very big milestone for Mastercard because it takes a lot actually to move a processing capability and platform on soil. But what this actually did achieve is that it made it a lot more seamless in the market. It allowed us to serve other customers in the region as well, making Saudi kind of the market where it sits. And of course, following, the rules and regulations as well within the market. And so this is an area that we're growing in. And I think this is probably something we're going to double down on for the next few years as well.
So obviously the dual badge component of it means it's when you put the customer at the heart of what you're trying to do, it makes it seamless to the customer as well. So they're allowed to use the same card to do both the domestic and international.
Exactly. One experience for both, whether it's domestic or international. So thank you very much for the congratulations to Paymentology, but congratulations to Mastercard.
Thank you very much.
Say the same. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's incredible because to move the whole of MPGS into Saudi and create a hub here, massive investment. But I think, again, it says to the regulators and to all of your customers that you are committed to making this region work. One thing and we'll probably have to have a whole nother segment on this, but I'm really excited to hear more about your Mastercard products, which, operate across both Mastercard network cards as well as MADA, because that's quite interesting, right? You're able to, again, provide the same experience regardless of rails.
Exactly. So I think, we talked about tokenization, of course, being, a key feature that we're rolling out, regardless of the scheme or the network that it's leveraging. But also the cyber and intelligence tools that we have apply, scheme agnostic at times. And so there's a lot of opportunity for our customers to potentially resell some of our cyber and intelligence tools or to embed these tools into their existing kind of capabilities. Things like credit scoring engines, for example, especially when we're talking about lending, is very important, or KYC, ID verification. So these are a lot of the things that we're actually kind of growing specifically within Saudi, but also in the wider EEMEA region.
And Jeff, the fact that Paymentology is also focusing on credit, things like working with Mastercard for credit scoring is really interesting.
Very interesting. I think that Mastercard have been a great partner for Paymentology for many, many years. And I think they've actually helped shape our roadmap a number of times because I think we can kind of talk through what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve. We have a stated strategy where, as we look to build products that we see are not core to our kind of expertise, we look to see what products Mastercard has to fill that gap. So it's been a very productive relationship for us.
Absolutely. I want to now zoom in on Mastercard's goals. I know that we've spoken, you have MPGS, you have new products, but how is a sophisticated infrastructure helping founders go from pilot to scale?
So from our standpoint, we're looking at the evolution of payments, and we're seeing, I think, kind of historic moments over the past several years now, moving from chip and pin to contactless and then to tokenization. So we're trying to support kind of our customers in every part of that journey, wherever they are. And we're also building ecosystems in terms of establishing those stakeholders for them. So for example, we've kind of built these platforms such as Engage, where our customers can enroll, they can showcase their platform capabilities and potentially get in touch with some of the customers that Mastercard works with. Similarly, we have a platform called Product Express, which is also for fintechs to come in, potentially find BIN sponsors, processors, and other solution providers as well under just one platform and capability. These are the things that we're expanding in and that we've kind of established in other parts of the world as well that are coming into the region. Also, similarly, we have a program called Start Path, which is for new entrants into the market who are just starting their business. And it's a fintech incubator where fintechs can come in, they can, get help in terms of scaling their business, get help in terms of raising funding, and also we can introduce them to some of the partners that we work with as well. So we've seen very big success stories. Revolut is actually one of the success stories that we have as part of Start Path. And so, this is a segment that we're also growing under.
Absolutely. I think Start Path is one of the Mastercard initiatives that we are always so excited about because we see such incredible talent and fintechs who are really changing the game with fantastic ideas to close the gap in the customer experience. So a huge fan of Start Path.
Quick sidebar. It made me realize how old I am. But you started with chip and PIN, which I was going to say, you only really started halfway through the evolution. But then actually, maybe that's where it started because you guys are so much younger than me. But we should have a vote on our podcast. Who can remember, obviously Signature was before chip and PIN, but who can remember the machine that used to put the zip up thing?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you remember?
I do remember that as well, actually.
Okay, good.
We're not that young, Jeff.
Okay,
we just
fine,
look
okay.
good.
Okay. That was great. Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, we on Instagram, there's all these memes like, oh, if you remember this, then, you shouldn't be on Instagram. I was like, oh, no.
What's Instagram?
What? We should have a poll for that one.
Jeff is on Facebook still, I think.
Exactly. I want to very, very quickly look at, Birce, you touched a lot on Start Path and, the different Mastercard initiatives. With Vision 2030, we know that there's a target of 525 fintechs entering Saudi by the end of 2030. Do you see a lot of fintechs coming through Start Path and how is that journey for them?
Yeah, we've definitely seen a growth in terms of number of fintechs that we're engaging with. And I think Jeff and I were chatting yesterday. It was 4 years ago that we actually established a fintech segment within Mastercard. Before then, fintech was not really a thing for us. And we didn't necessarily have a team dedicated to look after these partnerships and to engage with customers, understand their needs, and to serve them with our products and solutions. Now we're at a completely different situation where probably the fintech team is one of the biggest teams under digital partnerships. And we're really kind of trying to ensure that we have people on the ground who understand the local needs of the markets, who understand the fintech ecosystem, and who can serve our customers. And so with Saudi specifically going from 200 plus fintechs to 500 plus fintechs by 2030, this is an ambitious vision, and we need to make sure that we serve the customer needs in the market as well. And so we'll make sure that we are ready from a partnerships account management standpoint, from a product standpoint, and also just understanding the trends that will come in, for the next few years.
And what's one wish, you would have for fintechs entering Saudi? What's one integration they should, start with one program? What's the one thing that you wish every Saudi fintech that actually took heed and launched?
Well, so I think, I'm quite interested in the global trends as well that are taking place. So over the past few years, we've been hearing a lot about crypto and about stablecoin now, which is the common theme across a lot of the events. But also now we're seeing more and more agentic commerce. And I think that's going to be playing a really big role in the next few years. And so when I think about the future, I would say that the fintechs should start to look at other parts of the world, see what's been, growing in those markets as well, and really start to embed some of those solutions as part of their consumer journey as well. And, I don't think Saudi necessarily has to follow, but I think they can actually be the leader in some of this as well.
Absolutely. So let's not try to, remake the wheel. Let's take what we have, learn from it, and grow. I think that's where Saudi does really, really well. They look at what's around, what's globally trending, and then they just make it better, right? So continue. So let's start off with some quick fire predictions. Birce, by next year, the first digital payment touch point for new Saudi users will be ...
I do believe that there might be some evolution around national identity and wallets. And I think the two coming together will drive some sort of evolution as well. And I think we're seeing that in other parts of the world coming together and kind of bridging a more seamless consumer experience as well. So I think that's probably the next fold of innovation that we're going to see in Saudi.
Absolutely. And Jeff, to you, what is the most underestimated KPI for issuers in KSA this year?
I guess if we're following the trend of wallets and tokenization, I would say time to first tokenized transaction.
Absolutely. I think when you look at Saudi and being at Money 2020 in the Middle East, We've learned so much. There's so many new trends coming up. There are so many fintechs. I'm like, how did we not think about this before? So when we look at new entrants, looking at Saudi, my prediction, my hope for the fintechs is be brave. Look at the customer. Look at what is. There's a desert out here where people are building incredible things. We can do the same thing with payments. And so I think it's all about just creating new ways of doing things, new ways of payments. And let's all put our voice towards Vision 2030. Let's see how we can make an impact and actually change things. So firstly, I'd like to say, lastly, I would love for this conversation to continue. But we'd like to say thank you very much to our live audience here in Riyadh, and a huge thank you to Birce and Jeff for being here at the Money Pod of Money 2020. And thank you to all of our live listeners. Catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
That wraps up today's episode of the Issuer Academy, Paymentology's podcast to innovate, scale, and provide impact. I hope you're leaving with fresh insights and actionable strategies to help you revolutionize your card programs and drive true impact in the world. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, please leave a review to help us reach more pioneers like you. Also, be sure to subscribe and follow us for more inspiring episodes and behind-the-scenes content from Paymentology. Until next time, I'm Merusha Naidu. Keep innovating, keep scaling, and keep striving to make an impact.